Humanity Wake Up in Time, we have well over 100 specific scientific discoveries or events that Meier verifiably foretold before they happened. So this is, if what I'm saying is true, people have to ask themselves, how is it that this has been concealed from us? How is it that all that we've ever heard about this, if we've heard anything, is that, oh, it's a hoax by a farmer in Switzerland?
Yeah.
How is it that the UFO communities, all these people that claim to want to know the truth and to get disclosure and force the government, et cetera, how is it that they are opponents of this case, that they suppress it too, so that it doesn't threaten their livelihoods? This is huge stuff, and this is what we're up against. Yeah.
And for all of you listening out there, I don't want to make it sound like either Billy or Michael's on trial here, because here on the Unified Field, we try and keep our doorways open to all possibilities, which is the path of the true skeptic, the true scientist. I'm not claiming to be a scientist, but I'm saying that, this is the way you have to look at things, especially in the position we are with the planet and the world and the crux and the decision point of where we are. We have to make sure that, we're not throwing out the eggs with the nest here. Michael, I want to talk about some of these other prophecies that were foretold to Billy and what's coming up in the future. But maybe there are a couple more examples in the past of things that he said that actually did come true.
Well, gosh, he published information in 1976 that 3 discoveries would be made on Mars in the future. One, they would find water, they would find small microorganisms, life forms, and that they would find the environment hostile to life. That was in 76. In 2000, I think it was 2008, those discoveries were made. He beat NASA by 32 years. Then you've got the information he published on Io being the most volcanically active body in the solar system, and that he published 5 months before the probe got there.
Wow.
And
hey, you sent me an article about water on the moon and Billy making a prophecy about that. The discovery of water on the moon. Didn't you make mention of that?
I don't even remember. There's so much stuff. Just so much stuff.
Okay.
That you, here's the problem is this, that the Meier case has so much that nobody can comprehend that it's all real and true, that this is going on, because there's always so little that you can sink your teeth into when you get into stories about extraterrestrials and UFOs and all that business.
True.
And I sometimes don't know where to start with people. That's why I have this compilation article, Will Humanity Wake Up in Time? We just laundry list stuff, and it's being updated. Every month I have to put up another 20 or 30 things that people find and say, well, didn't Billy warn about this? Didn't Billy warn about that? We have a little project warning about the Apophis asteroid.
I was just about to talk about that. Yeah. Go into that, Michael.
Sure. In 1981, Meier published information given to him by the extraterrestrials in a conversation about something he called, or they called, the red meteor. Now, the red meteor, they said, was an object that was coming for the first time from outer space into our world, not into our world, first into our solar system, that would be headed towards our Earth, and that there was an enormous high likelihood, almost a certainty, that it will strike the Earth either in 2029 or 2036. He publishes this in 1981. 23 years later, in 2004, an asteroid is discovered on the outer reaches of our solar system, very far out, that has a trajectory that looks like, to scientists, that it could come in our direction and hit this Earth in 2029 or 2036.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. And they named it Apophis. He called it the red meteor, they called it Apophis. So it was later confirmed from Meier by the Pleiaren that, yes, this is what we've been talking about. What we told you about in 81, here it comes. And your scientists have to come together and make a concerted worldwide effort to deflect it by special means, and they described how to do it, so that this thing is intercepted but not blown up. Because if you blow it up, you're going to have a virtual storm, a rainstorm of these pieces of asteroid coming down in your world. So the Russians, we think the Russians have paid attention to Meier, because just like a year ago, I think it was November they published a worldwide call for assistance to intercept and deflect the Apophis asteroid out of nowhere.
Wow.
And, of course, NASA naturally is minimizing it. Oh, it's not really a danger. So that means somebody doesn't want to lose their funding or whatever it is. We have to get past all of this horrendous stuff with the way we so prioritize profit over everything else. It does not bode well for our country down here. It doesn't bode well for the rest of the world with our influence either. So they have made it very clear that this is coming, and I commissioned a really good comic book artist to take the exact transcript. We don't add any words or anything to it, and we illustrated it, and we've got it up on my website, They Fly website. We have a link to it. We have 2 episodes up. We now have it up, I think, in 5 languages, soon to be 6 or 7. So we're trying to get that out there in a form that a lot of younger people might pay attention to and might want to start putting their calls into NASA and other places. Hey, what's going on? We've been paying a little attention to this here comic. What's it about?
Yeah.
So that's something we're trying to enforce and get done.
Yeah, I read the comic book today. The artwork is phenomenal.
Isn't it good? Andrew Towell, he's living in Hawaii now, just does beautiful work.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And you know what? I didn't realize this before, but the way that he's written down all this information related to him from the Pleiadian, everything's numbered in such a way so that in the future, if he's accused of changing the data to fit his story, then this can corroborate? Is that how exactly does that work, the numbering of all of the passages?
Well, I'll explain. You see, whenever he would transcribe the context, they would send it to him telepathically. And what he would do is he would take each sentence spoken by an extraterrestrial, whoever was speaking to him, and each one, let's say there were 1 person or 3 people, each person, he had to number their individual sentences sequentially. And he asked them why, and they said, well, because your information is going to get disseminated all over the world and in different languages. And if people who are small-minded are going to try to, they're going to try and say, oh, you backdated things. But because every sentence, let's say contact 16 or 61, there's so-and-so speaking to you, and here are all the sentences, and they're all numbered. So every book that has it, every transcript anywhere in any language, that number's, transcript 61, sentence number 21 or 34, anything else, they're all going to be the same. It'll show the consistency that, no, you didn't go back and slip it in there. And indeed, it's true. You can just see that it is done impeccably that way. It's a monumental thing he has to do, but it preserves the integrity and authenticates that he has not gone back and tampered with things, because indeed the books, the transcripts have made it all over the world. And so there are people sitting here, there, and everywhere that have got a book of Meier's material. And if I say to them, well, in 1978, he told Wendell Stevens about 2 planets beyond Pluto, even though he already had published that in 58, but we have it in the book in 78, and they go and they look, it's in that book, just where we tell them it is. So this is very important.
Yeah, so did you say he has 20, how many pages, 2,400 pages or 24,000 pages of transcribed notes?
Over 26,000.
Oh, my Lord.
Typed out in German with one hand at over 60 words a minute.
You're right. Yeah, now, for all of you who don't know out there in Radio Land, Colonel Wendell Stevens, who just passed away last year, he was a retired USAF fighter pilot who turned UFO investigator in 49. And, he spent over 5 decades as a researcher and director of the International UFO Congress since its inception. And, he was part of this thing called the Ptarmigan Project up in the Arctic. Yeah. Cataloging EMF emissions and strange phenomena up there, and became this guy who had the world's largest private collection of UFO photographs in the world, who I think is in the works of selling to, or his estate is selling to Open Minds, perhaps. Now, he's been directly involved with Billy Meier for those, forever, 5 decades ago. How does he fit into the picture?
He was the first American to receive information and photographs from someone in Europe, from Billy, and that's what got him very interested in wanting to research the case. He spoke to 2 friends of his who were private investigators, very high level, Lee and Britt Elders. They thought that it was probably going to be a hoax, and they wanted to help Wendell so he didn't get swindled or anything. And they formed the core of a team that eventually had Tom Welch and Jim Delatosa and some other people who, had different functions participating. And they did go to Switzerland over a period of like 8 years, back and forth regularly with all the evidence and the photos and the transcripts. They were picked up by the CIA every time, going to, from the U.S. through Zurich to through London, rather, to Zurich. And he was involved every step of the way in the very important foundational research and investigation. And they found this case, this is real. They could not find any hoaxing. There was no collaborators. There was no financial aid. There was no technology provided. There were no model makers. The guy lived in a very rural, rugged area. He wasn't near libraries. He didn't have subscriptions to science magazines. I mean, they looked into it, as did a guy named Gary Kinder, who then later did his own investigation, because people thought, well, there must be collaborators. If somebody's funding this, someone's making models, someone's doing the photography. It was all just Meier by himself. And with as we said, over 125 witnesses today. This is why, if people come to me kind of either relatively new to the whole UFO paranoia, well, what should we investigate? What about that? I'd say, you know what? Forget about UFOs. You want UFOs, go to the Meier case. You'll be looking at the real thing. Get your fill of that, and then get into the information and start finding out what this is about, because we don't have a lot of time. And all the folks that want to hold all these UFO events and everything and babble about UFOs, good night. I've done my share of them. A lot of nice people. It goes nowhere because there's nothing there. No substance, never will be, but you can come home and go, gee, I wonder. So if you want the real deal, you go do this. And I'm not shy about saying that now. Yeah. I was a lot shyer before. I was trying to be just a little more neutral and all, but enough people never caught on to what was going on. And people were still just getting hung up on UFOs and ETs and alien abduction nonsense and exopolitics. Absolute gibberish. This is just so your listeners know, this is purely me speaking. It's not Justin. He's giving me a platform to spout off. But, I've been at this for 32 years, and I wouldn't mind if there were all sorts of contactees and if there were benevolent extraterrestrials engaging humanity as the people in exopolitics falsely claim. It's just not true. It doesn't exist. So either we stay trapped in fantasy land with all of the virtual life that people live in what I've coined a term, and I call it the cyberficial world. And if you want to do that and just spend your time with video games and pretend, that's fine, but it's not real. This is going to challenge you. It's going to offend you. It's going to upset you, and it may even delight you. That's the Meier case.
Right. So are you saying you don't believe that that the current extraterrestrial hypothesis about species coming to visit is not actually happening, other than in the Billy Meier case, or?
That's correct.
Really?
There have been, in our history, in human history, there have been lots and lots of different beings over time that have come to Earth and that have interacted, that have colonized, that have disappeared, that have died off, that have stayed. That's happened over literally millions of years. The problem is, to the extraterrestrial hypotheses as it's put forward now, there are none extraterrestrials on Earth, except when they visit Billy and they're seen there. There is no engaging. They're not in the desert working for the U.S. military underground. They're not abducting people to create hybrid babies. Now, those statements will fly in the face of what a lot of people believe, but I can, if you want, I'll take you through it logically, and I'll show you it's preposterous. Unfortunately, quite literally preposterous.
I can understand the controversy of Michael Horn. Very interesting.
Here's the problem. You know of a guy named Stephen Bassett, I would think.
Yeah, sure.